and welcome to my first actual recorded video for Arkham Horror the card game. This particular run is a bit of an experiment in that this is the first video I've recorded for YouTube, so I hope you'll all forgive me if it seems a little hesitant at first, as I am effectively sitting here talking to myself, which, if you consider the concept, is a little strange at first. Anyway, I hope you all have keeping well and keeping your social distancing under the interesting circumstances we find ourselves in as of the end of April 2020. I hope you're keeping well, and I hope you're keeping sane, possibly by watching other investigators going insane. As I've probably already mentioned in a preview, we are working with, one moment while my keyboard stops working. Here we go. As I've probably already introduced, I've picked two decks off of Arkham DB, both by someone by the name of Start With The Name. Thank you to Start With The Name for all the decks you put online. I always find them quite interesting, and these two in particular are versions of my favourites. The first one being William Yorrick. What I've chosen is the second version of the Nervous Wrecking Ball decks. They're a lot of fun to play, as well as being effective, and they fit quite nicely into his theme as well. So I always have a lot of fun with these ones. And then for my second player, I've got Ursula Downs. Fast and Curious is the name of the deck that Start With The Name's called it on Arkham DB. Again, it combines being effective with being a lot of fun, and I find Ursula and William to be quite an interesting duo. I have run them through a couple of scenarios in the past, but never the Dream Eaters, which is the scenario I've picked for today. And as you can see here on Tabletop Simulator, I've already got the scenario set up. Now, I know some people don't like spoilers, or at the very least don't like to hear the story being read out at the same time as watching the game. So what I plan to do is try and make the best of both worlds. So I'm going to read out the prologue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit out the story text, and for one version that I'll post to YouTube, and I'll keep the story text in for those who want to have that for a second version. So let's start with the prologue. Friday, February the 13th, 1925. Something odd was happening in Arkham, Massachusetts. Typically, this would not be a surprise to the residents of the dreary New England town. Indeed, Arkham has always been well known for its strange, some would say supernatural, occurrences. The nature of this particular circumstance, however, was anything but typical. It all began in the latest issue of Tales from Nevermore. A writer by the name of Virgil Gray described a journey he had taken in his dreams, a journey he claimed was not a work of fiction on his part. He wrote of a long, spiralling staircase, an unbearably hot pillar of sentient fire, a tree that came from the moon, and a curious talking cat, among other things equally difficult to believe. But it wasn't this extraordinary tale that first drew your attention. Soon after Virgil's tale was published, Tales from Nevermore began to receive and publish letter after letter from those who had read Virgil's story and claimed to have experienced the same exact dream. Before long, the Arkham Advertiser picked up the story, and news of this strange phenomenon reached the ears of experts. Virgil Gray was convinced to undergo therapy at the local asylum, and many more who shared in the writer's psychosis were committed as well. The prevailing theory among academics is that Virgil's dream felt so real that he could not separate fact from fiction, and that his writings spread his delusions to others like a form of shared hysteria. You remain unconvinced. After all, There is much that is not known about the simple act of dreaming. Medical experts have wildly differing theories on the state of one's brain during sleep. Recently, experts like Sigmund Freud have proposed that dreams are manifestations of one's subconscious desires, fears, or obsessions. Fortune tellers, for their part, have long believed that dreams can be sifted and interpreted in order to tell the dreamer's past or future. But if these theories are true, how could multiple parties, all from very different walks of life, have the same shared experiences in their dreams? What if our modern understanding of sleep is all wrong? What if there really is a place our consciousness travels to when we sleep, a land of dreams that exists beyond our waking world? You and your companions have gathered together to get to the bottom of this strange phenomenon. If others in town can travel to another world in their dreams, perhaps you can too. You've recreated the circumstances of Virgil's dream perfectly. If all goes well, half of you will take a trip to this dreamland and back. The rest will stay in the waking world, studying your companion's sleep patterns to ensure nothing goes wrong. Scenario 1A, Beyond the Gates of Sleep. Okay, so we have William, who is a warden and a gravedigger. That gives us a choice of one of two dreams. We can either take a neutral dream, or we can take the survivor dream. So I think for William, we'll take the survivor dream. You are fleeing through a dark, cramped hall of vine-covered wood. Something inexplicable chases you through the murk. You are too terrified to turn and look upon your pursuer, but nonetheless you know that if it catches you, it will mean the end of your life. It will pierce your heart, drain your blood, and devour your insides. It is this thought that drives you onward, faster than you have ever run before. You cannot let it reach you. You cannot let it feed. Suddenly you spot your way out, a sturdy wooden door surrounded by a wall of vines. Action. Search your deck for a survivor card and play it, paying its cost. Well, we start with 5 resources, and we'll have a look at what's in William's deck. So, having a look around, we have resourceful, not particularly useful at the moment, drawing thin, which is always useful, act desperation, meat cleaver, always useful to have a weapon out early on, lucky, take heart, another drawing thin, look what I found, cherished keepsake, which is a personal favourite, enchanted blade is not a survivor card, look what I found, or meat cleaver. Now, William always is a bit low on sanity in my experience, and recycling cherished keepsake is a particularly good thing, something that he's particularly good at. However, in the early stages of this game, we are going to be moving around a lot and doing a lot of searches. It's not to say we might not need to do some fighting later on. Of course, we do have track shoes, which gives him an additional foot test. I think in the older version of William's deck, which had the gravedigger's shovel in it, I think I would have picked that for this scenario to allow me to pick up some clues. But given where we start from, I think let's start with drawing thin. Now I'm not planning to play the taboo list for this run through, simply because I'm not that familiar with it, and it'll save me a lot of time and effort trying to learn it. So there we go, drawing thin, which has a 0 cost. Moving over to Ursula, she is a wayfarer as well as a seeker. So that gives us a choice of a seeker dream or a wayfarer dream. Just for interest, let's go for the wayfarer dream. You trudge chest deep through a brackish swamp. Impossibly large bulrushes tower over you, and clouds of strange iridescent insects swarm through the fetid air. With each step, your feet sink deeper into the soft muck, threatening to pull you under. You feel something slick and cold glide across your leg, and you lunge towards dry land, but the more you struggle, the further you sink. In a blink of an eye, you are consumed whole by the mire, yet you are still falling ever downwards. Eventually, you are deposited onto a stone floor along with a small mudslide. You find yourself in a sealed chamber, lit by the pale blue glimmering of strange hieroglyphs. The symbols frame an intricate golden door to the crypt you've been searching for. Action. Search your deck for a Wayfarer or Relic card and play it, paying its cost. So again, we start with 5 resources. And let's have a look at our deck. And we're allowed to pick a Wayfarer or Relic card. Do we have any of those? It's an interesting question. We do indeed the Cthulhu stone, or we could get out Jake Williams, our loyal companion. So look, a first move or investigate action you perform each turn does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Well, that's okay, and obviously he's got a very good soak. But there's a reason we have a relic in here. We could potentially seal a token. So let's have a look at what tokens we've got in the bag. We're going to do standard difficulty. And on, just close this a second. And on standard difficulty, occultist is the number of field enchanted woods locations, which gets potentially quite nasty later on. Tablet is only -2, but if you fail an attack or evasion, you add 1 swarm card to it. So we have 2 tablets and 1 cultist. So again, let's have a look. I think in hindsight, going for a seeker card would have been more advantageous to us on this occasion, but we are where we are. Once again, let's just check we don't have any other Wayfarer cards. "13th Vision" is quite a nasty one to start with. I've never really played too much with the Cthulhu stone, so let's use the Cthulhu stone as just for curiosity's sake. And we get, it costs us 3 resources. And we get to seal a token. So again, going back to have a look at the chaos bag, I think let's seal the cultist. That means at least then we know that the cultist isn't going to be an issue until we reveal a tentacle counter. Okay, so that's the prologue done. So let's have a look at our cards. Let's have a look at the agenda cards and the act cards. The agenda. From your initial dream, you have been drawn into a familiar landscape, the same one that Virgil Grey traversed in his story in Tales from Nevermore. Is this real, or is your mind simply conjuring what it expects to see? Forced. When doom is placed on this agenda during the mythos phase, if any investigators at a steps location place 1 additional doom on this agenda. So this is going to encourage us to move as quickly as possible through the steps. Entering the dreamlands. The door leading out of your initial dream takes you to a stone staircase. Thousands of different stairways join together here, forming an incomprehensible nexus of steps where the worlds and stories join together. Where the stairs meet, they form a single spiralling pathway descending deeper into the land of dreams. Do not draw cards from the encounter deck during the mythos phase. Objective. If an investigator enters the cavern of flame, immediately advance. Okay. So let's just draw hands for investigators. So 5 for William. So we get Take Heart, which helps when you fail. On the Hunt, which allows you to draw an enemy, look for an enemy instead of drawing a random card for the encounter phase. Cherished Keepsake, well, we're definitely keeping that one. Like I said, that's an old favourite of mine. Lucky, always useful in a generic sense, but not really what we're looking for in an opening hand, I would suggest. And we've got Kleptomania as a basic weakness, which might have some interesting interactions with William, but again, we discard that. So I think we'll get rid of Take Heart, at least initially. That'll be more useful later on. On the Hunt, again, we're not likely to encounter too many cards initially. Definitely want to keep Cherished Keepsake, and I think Lucky might come in useful. It could save us an action or two, particularly early on. So let's draw 3 more. And we get Take the Initiative. Resourceful again, and Take Heart again. So not the greatest opening hand, but we'll work with what we've got. So let's put these back in the deck and shuffle it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the hands on the, if I can remember where it is. I think it's under options somewhere. Because I find that it tends to confuse things when you're playing two-handed. So let's draw 5 cards for Ursula. 5 cards, not all of them. And we get Unearth the Ancients. Magnifying Glass, always nice to see that early on. the weakness, 13th vision, another magnifying glass, and shortcut. Well, obviously we'll put the Unearth the Ancients back. Unearth the Ancients is really good for when you have expensive relics in your hand, but at the moment we only have magnifying glasses, which are fairly cheap, so I don't think we really need those. And then shortcut, we can move an investigator to connecting location. That's actually, normally I'd throw this back, but I think that's actually going to be quite useful in the early stages of this scenario, which involves basically investigating and moving a great deal. So I'll draw 2 extra cards, hyper awareness, and could really do some resource generation here, logical reasoning. Okay, so no Dr. Milan, but we'll work with what we've got. Possibly I should have thrown more cards back in an attempt to get him. I know that some experienced players might have been shouting at me for that one, especially seeing we drew hyper awareness, which is going to be a resource sink and then some. But it is what it is. Logical reasoning might come useful later on. Okay, so we start at the 70 steps of lighter slumber. You are no longer in your own world. A spiral of twisting stone steps hangs suspended in ether with no visible means of support. At the bottom of the steps is an island landing, also floating in the void, where a tall golden gateway leads to a brightly lit cavern. That starts with 2 clues on it. It has a shroud of 1. And forced, when you leave the 70 steps, take 1 horror for each card in your hand in excess of 5. As a free action, as a fast action, you can choose and discard 1 card from your hand. Now we're starting with less than 5 or less. For those who didn't select the option to listen to the story, the card we start out with free of charge for William is Drawing Thin. And the card we are starting free of charge for Ursula is Chthonian Stone, and we've chosen to seal Occultist Token. So we start off with the investigator phase, which, given Ursula is our main investigator, our Clover, we'll probably start with her. And I think if we have a look at the card, this is the steps, which means if we're still here during the Mythos phase next turn, there'll be an extra doom. So we need to get off here as soon as possible. It's 1 clue, so we need to clear 2 clues as quickly as possible. So I think what we'll do is we will start with Ursula, attempt to get the clues. Ursula can then move to the new location, and then William can move to the new location and start working on whatever challenges that faces us. So the question is, do we get out hyper awareness, despite the fact we have no resources, or just the magnifying glasses? And I think under the circumstances, getting out both magnifying glasses is probably a good idea. They're both fast actions, so it's 1 resource plus 1 resource is 2 resources. And then for our first action, we're going to investigate. Now Ursula has 4 book plus another 2 for magnifying glass, leads us to 6. The shroud gives an investigative 6. The shroud on the 70 steps is 1, so that's 6 versus 1. And so for a first action, investigate, -3, That's a success. We'll do the same again for a second action. Six again. Elder sign. After this test ends, you may move to a connecting location. That's very useful. So we've gained both clues. Now you can just keep the clue tokens, but in the most recent version of Tabletop you can just use a clue counter like that. So I'm going to dispose of these two into the pool. And because I got an Elder token, I could get a free movement. So I have less than 5 cards in my hand, so I don't take any horror. I cannot enter the Cavern of Flame unless all of the clues are discovered. They are. So with my free movement, as part of my second action, I shall move over to the Cavern of Flame. Right. At the end of the Mistress phase, each investigator in the Cavern of Flame takes a point of damage. But at the same time, if an investigator enters the Cavern of Flame, immediately advance. At the centre of the cavern is a pillar of flame flanked by 2 robed bearded men. You recognise this scene from the writings of Virgil Grey. The priests, the cavern. It's all as he described. Either you have ventured into the same dreamscape, or you are sharing in his delusions. You must be tested, one of the priests says enigmatically. Your ordeal will be great, and thus, so too will be your trial. Each investigator loses all of their clues. Put the set-aside Nashed and Kamanthar enemies into play in the Cavern of Flame. Add 1 skull token to the Chaos Bag for the remainder of the campaign. Okay, so let's do that in order. Each investigator loses all the clues. So next, put the set-aside Nashed and Kamanthar enemies into play in the Cavern of Flame. So if we search the set-aside, we should have Nashed and Kamanthar. And we'll take those. Oh, let's try that again. Now, I have a tendency to copy and paste rather than move. The reason for this is it means if you make a mistake and accidentally delete something, you can go and find it again. So we've done that. Next, add 1 skull token to the Chaos Bag. So let's go and find ourselves a Chaos token. A skull. And again, I'm going to copy this rather than move it. There we go. So that's all those actions. And we move on to reading the act. The Trial of Nashed and Kamanthar. The barred golden gates beyond will not open for you. Only the priests can judge whether you are worthy to pass through the steps below. They cross their weapons, a steel halberd and a silver scythe, in front of the gates. Do not draw cards from the encounter deck during the Mythos phase. Objective: if neither Nashed nor Kamanthar are in play, immediately advance. Okay, so that's all pretty action-packed for our second action, because do remember that we got a free movement from the Mythos token as part of her test. So let's have a look at Nashed and Kamanthar for our third action. What do we need to do? If we parley with Nashed, we can test fight or foot. Well, fight is definitely not Ursula's preferred method. To prove you are worthy. With 2 players, so the test is full difficulty. Or we can attempt to deal with Kamanthar, who is testing book or willpower on the same basis. Well, willpower is definitely not willpower. Book is definitely more Ursula's speed, and because it's a book test, not an investigator test, her base is 4. So 4 foot or 4 book. Or we could do the willpower test, but I can only play it if I've got a clue, which I don't. Or I can play it as a skill card for double brain. That might be worth doing. Hyper awareness we want to keep so we can bring it out later. Looking across at William, he can definitely take on the fight side of things, and he's got a lucky in reserve just in case, saving to take the initiative for later. So I think what we will do is William's going to take on the fight task, so Ursula is going to take on parlaying with Cameron Thar. So it's difficulty 4 for either willpower or book. And seeing we have a logical reasoning, that brings our willpower up to 5. Thing is, I quite like having the horror soap, but we do have Mr. Porterson, so 5 versus 4 is still not that good an odds. I would like to get it up to 6 really. I suppose I could play the shortcut, but we really want to use that to move through these steps as quickly as possible. But if we fail, we're still going to be delayed. So I'm going to play logical reasoning. I'm going to commit logical reasoning, get me to 5, and then I'm going to commit the shortcut as well. Do I get rid of the hyper awareness? What am I more likely to use? To be honest, I haven't got my resource generation out, whereas I will definitely want to use my shortcut in the next few turns. So I think what I'm going to do instead, I still have to spend a shortcut. So willpower test. 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 4. Chaos Bag says auto fail. Oh, okay, first auto fail of the campaign, and let's have a look at. No, sadly I failed. If you succeed, if you fail, he attacks each investigator, so I take 1 damage. Okay, not the best of starts there. So combination of a good start and a bad start. So 1 damage onto Ursula, and that's the end of her turn. So over to William. So William's first action is going to be to move into the cavern. And he has 5 cards, so he's safe from the horror loss. So first things first, I think he's going to do the fight test for Nashed. So first action was to move. Let's flip that over. Now we've got to do Nashed, which is a difficulty 4. Do we want to do anything else first? Well, we can't really take the initiative because that means he has to go first, which I think is probably going to happen next turn. I can play Mr. Porterson, but I want to keep that action ready for if we succeed. And lucky, so yeah, I think we're going to go straight in at the 4 now. Drawing thing doesn't allow me to make it a 6. Which could gain me a shed load of resources. Problem is, if we stay where we are this turn, I'll take a damage. However, if number of cards in hand is actually a bad thing in this scenario in the early stages. So I think at this stage we just want to pass the blooming test. So we've got 4. 4 fight against a difficulty of 4. I think on the grounds that I want to actually get rid of lucky from my hand, I think I'm just going to go with that. So for my second action I'm going to test 4 versus 4. I get a tablet. So what is the tablet? The tablet is -2. But, so I would fail, but if I play lucky, I get +2 to my skill test, so it costs me 1 resource, and I pass the test. So what does this gentleman have to say for himself? Flip it over. I parleyed with Nash. Your quest will lead to death, the priest foretells. Prove that you can survive what is to come, and I shall let you past. Show me your weapon. Oh, no innuendo there, then. You open your hand and reveal the first weapon that comes to mind. Nash slaps it out of your hand. That is not a weapon. Show me your true weapon. You think for a moment. What weapon could the Guardian possibly be referring to? What weapon would help you survive in a place like this? Then the answer hits you, plain as day. You point to your temple and Nash nods. Very well. Add this card to the victory display. Okay, so for my second action, we have bypassed Nash. So going back to Kamanthar, we really could do with him being out of our way, which is a willpower of books. That would be a willpower 4 test. So how are we set up for a willpower 4 test? Oh, William's not too bad in willpower. He's got 3. He's as good as our Cthulhu is in that behalf. But I really don't want to be discarding the cherished keepsake to that. And I could take the initiative next turn and commit 3 to it. Given I've used up all my moves this turn, I'm still going to be at this location anyway. So I think what I'll do is for my third action is I'm going to bring out cherished keepsake. For no resources. I've already used that one. And that's the end of William's turn. At the end of the missile, okay, so we don't have to move yet. Okay, so there's no... Kamanthar is aloof, so there are no enemies that will attack at the moment. So that means we can move on to the upkeep phase. We turn everything upright. We draw a card, and I always draw a card first because some weaknesses get rid of your resources. I've drawn it on the hunt. So those of you not familiar with it, I'll do a little magnification. And Ursula draws a guts. Add a resource to Ursula, add a resource to William, and then we move on to the mythos phase. So we are currently at a steps location, so that means that we must place an additional doom this round because of the forced keyword on the agenda. So that moves us up to 2 doom. Alright. So our objective at the moment is to get rid of Cameron Thar. So it's now our turn again. I'll just reset Yorrick and Ursula's action tokens, which I should have done at the end of the round. Okay, so realistically speaking, we want to take the initiative here with Yorrick. So no actions have been taken by the team. This would give me 3. So looking at Cameron Thar, it's a willpower or book 4 test. Well, I don't want to do that. I wanted just to reset the camera. There we go. There's a way of getting rid of some of these menu items. Just trying to remember how to do that. No. Options maybe. No. I'm sure it will come to us. Anyway, so I need a 4 for willpower, 3 from William's willpower. Is it willpower? Let's go and check that again. Yes, willpower book. So William has 3 willpower, plus take initiative is 6 against 3. Don't really want to. I could potentially get my lucky back by allocating this, but I think I might need this resource for another time. So 6 against 3. So first action. And it's a 0, so that's a success. So I'll take the initiative, goes to our discard pile. Oh, I forgot to damage. Give 1 damage to each investigator for being in the cavern of flame. So there we go. So Cameron Thar flips over. Your mind is strong, the Guardian admits, but are you ready to shed your concept of truth? Of reality? If so, alter your clothing. You protest out of confusion. This is a land of wills. The priest continues. If your resolve is truly strong enough, prove it to me. You close your eyes and imagine a different outfit, strained to recall its texture, its colour, its smell. Each and every thread of fabric. When you open your eyes, you're wearing it. Good, Cameron Thar says, stepping aside. Add this card to the victory display. Okay, so that will allow us to advance. And I'll move these back into the set aside box because we don't need them anymore.